3 o'clock in the afternoon. You are sitting on a weathered wooden bench inside the 4th Classified Records Warehouse of the General Staff, using a worn Parker fountain pen to verify the quarterly depletion rate of rye flour for the Capitol Garrison's No. 3 granary. Sunlight streams through the high, dusty windows, illuminating the coarse ledger pages and stirring the dry, sterile scent of mothballs and aged paper. Your fingers are stained with smears of blue ink, a mundane administrative chore that has served as your flawless camouflage for the past 12 years. To the outside world, you are merely an obscure logistics colonel, a bureaucrat consumed by the wear and tear of truck tires, the shelf life of canned rations, and precise, seemingly disconnected numbers. For a man in your position, survival is a discipline measured in grams. The heavy iron warehouse doors are suddenly thrown open, the brutal metallic slam echoing through the cavernous, vaulted space. 3 men in black leather trench coats stride in, their hard leather soles striking the concrete floor with a cold, rhythmic snap. At the front is Mags, the notorious chief of the National Security Bureau's 3rd Department. His military rank is technically lower than yours, but the silver badge pinned to his lapel, signifying direct authorization from the Supreme Commander, instantly freezes the air in the room. He does not salute. Instead, he steps forward and casually places a manila folder alongside a loaded 9mm Makarov pistol directly on top of your open ledger. Mags's voice sounds like unlubricated machinery, completely devoid of human emotion. He informs you that this is the latest purge list signed by the Supreme Commander himself. Tonight at 9 o'clock, 42 high-ranking military officers, including your former mentor and academy instructor, General Hines, and your wife's brother, Colonel Robin of the 2nd Infantry Regiment, will be executed by firing squad in the courtyard of the Ministry of the Interior. The Dictator has specifically designated you as the Chief Logistics Coordinator for tonight's executions. You are responsible for scheduling the firing squads, allocating the specific ammunition, configuring the covered transport vehicles for the bodies, and signing this official asset liquidation form to strip the condemned of their military status. You look down at the paper. The very first name on the list is Hines, the old man who pulled you out of the provincial mud and shaped you into a strategist. The third is Robin, whose 7-year-old daughter spent last weekend playing in your living room. Mags's voice continues to hover over you like a vulture, stating that you have exactly 20 minutes to sign the document and take command of the outer security perimeter. If your signature is missing when the clock runs out, or if the armory fails to release the specialized execution rounds, your name will be written in red ink at the 43rd position, and your family will be routed to an isolation camp within 2 hours. The Supreme Commander demands absolute obedience, or absolute liquidation. A suffocating moral weight crashes down on your chest like a collapsing brick wall. Cold sweat begins to pool in your palms, slicking the barrel of your fountain pen. Despair and terror claw at your insides, yet under the stimulus of extreme, immediate danger, your brain undergoes an eerie, almost pathological shift into absolute clarity. You understand with brutal certainty that refusing to sign will not save a single soul on that list. It will only send your own head rolling into the lime pit alongside theirs, while stripping your defenseless family of their lives. Survival instinct and moral revulsion tear at your consciousness, your eyes darting between the cold blue steel of the Makarov and the names of the people you love. You take a slow, deep breath, and the scent of the old paper now reek of decaying flesh. You do not reach for the gun, nor do you utter a sound. You unscrew the cap of your pen, and with a hand that remains terrifyingly steady, you sign your name in the bottom right corner of the asset liquidation form. Your penmanship is immaculate, identical to your standard signatures on routine flower requisitions. Next, you reach out and slide the heavy, cold Makarov into your waistband. You lift your gaze to meet Mags's eyes, betraying no trace of anger, showing only a facade of cold, broken submission. You tell him that the number 3 ammunition depot has already prepared 2,000 rounds of reduced charge 9mm execution ammunition, that 3 transport trucks will be parked at the Interior Ministry's rear courtyard by precisely 8:40, and that you will personally supervise the entire operation. Mags stares at you for a few agonizing seconds, a viper-like smile creeping onto the corner of his mouth before turning on his heel and leading his men out. The moment the heavy iron doors bang shut, you collapse against the back of the wooden bench, listening to the thundering roar of your own pulse. You know that the mundane colonel who calculated rye flour depletion died in that exact minute. You have crossed an irreversible bloody threshold into a high-stakes arena governed entirely by conspiracies, gallows, and betrayal. Your soul has been bartered away, but your eyes burn with a sudden, vicious fire to ensure that this agonizing degradation and terror never rule the remainder of your days. You must seize the absolute supreme power of this state. You adjust the stiff collar of your uniform, button it tight, and stride out of the warehouse to assume command of the execution perimeter, ready to watch your mentors and family die and to etch the smell of their blood into the very marrow of your bones. That night in the courtyard of the Ministry of the Interior, the glare of the searchlights is a blinding, sickly white. You stand less than 15 yards from the execution wall, your eardrums vibrating with the synchronized thunder of the firing squads. You do not close your eyes. You force yourself to witness every detail, watching the lead rounds tear through flesh and the bodies collapse into the dirt. Before the blindfold was tied, General Hines looked directly at you, and in his eyes there was no hatred, only a cruel, demanding expectation. You stand just outside the expanding pool of blood, your voice flat and robotic as you direct the soldiers to load the corpses onto the trucks, throw on the quicklime, and log every spent shell casing. Because of this display of absolute, unblinking ruthlessness and flawless administrative efficiency, the Supreme Commander summons you 3 days later, promoting you to Brigadier General and placing you directly into the nerve center of the regime's logistics and strategic deployment. From that hour onward, you begin a meticulous, years-long shadow campaign. You are acutely aware that within a nation choked by a pervasive domestic spy network, any overt talk of justice or liberty is an immediate death sentence. You must appear more corruptible, more status-driven, and more submissive than the most fanatical loyalists. Utilizing your new authority, you systematically consolidate control over the supply chains and defensive deployments of the entire capital garrison. Over the next 3 years, you develop an entirely covert discipline of subversive logistics, embedding a treasonous architecture within the margins of mundane military paperwork. The core of your strategy relies on the deception of raw data. You discover massive discrepancies and gray areas within the garrison's weapon depreciation and ammunition reserve ledgers. For over 1,000 days, you exploit your authority over the logistics of the counterinsurgency forces fighting in the Northern Territories, systematically over-reporting ammunition expenditure. Every time a minor skirmish occurs along the border, you artificially inflate the small arms ammunition consumption figures by exactly 30% on the official ledgers, claiming the munitions were ruined by jungle humidity or abandoned during tactical retreats. The Supreme Commander cares only about daily rebel body counts. He never scrutinizes the granular nuances of supply manifests. These ghost assets, wiped clean from the state's books, do not vanish. You utilize a hand-picked convoy of transport drivers, men bound to you by shared financial crimes and mutual survival, to move these munitions under the cover of midnight to an abandoned salt mine 30 kilometers north of the capital. You purchase the land through a front company registered as an agricultural development firm. By the conclusion of your 3rd year, this subterranean arsenal has quietly amassed 2.4 million rounds of rifle ammunition, 12,000 defensive fragmentation grenades, 450 heavy anti-tank guided missiles, and 150,000 liters of premium military-grade diesel fuel. these figures occupy your thoughts every waking hour. They are no longer abstract data points, but the iron spine of your impending coup. Yet, steel and gunpowder are useless without flesh and blood, and finding allies within the military high command requires dancing on a razor's edge. You focus your efforts on senior officers who have been pushed to their psychological limits by frontline combat and who face the constant threat of political purges. Your primary target is Major General Vance, commander of the 3rd Mechanized Division. Vance's forces are stationed 45 kilometers outside the city center, controlling 120 main battle tanks, the definitive heavy armor that will decide the success or failure of any coup. Through exhaustive surveillance, you learn that Vance's younger brother was secretly executed by the Security Bureau 2 years ago for questioning the dictator's economic decrees. And though Vance maintains a veneer of ironclad military obedience, his entire lineage is being systematically marginalized by the inner cabinet. You choose to approach Vance during the joint spring exercises of your 4th year. Inside a tactical command tent swept for listening devices, you offer him no grandiloquent speeches about patriotism or democratic ideals. Instead, you slide a photocopied sheet from a classified National Security Bureau dossier across the map table. It is a document you obtained by bribing a senior archivist, bearing the Supreme Commander's distinct blue signature, an explicit directive to relieve Vance of his command early next year under the pretext of tactical incompetence and replace him with a fanatical party loyalist. You lean in close, your voice dropping to a whisper as Vance stares at the paper, his knuckles turning white as he grips the edge of the table. You tell him plainly,
"He can either hang like a dog on a public gallows next winter, or he can climb into the lead tank alongside the man who controls every bullet and gallon of fuel in the capital."
Vance does not report you. He understands that betraying you will not purchase his long-term survival from a paranoid dictator. In that tent, amidst the smell of motor oil and heavy canvas, he extends his hand. Your alliance is forged not on shared virtue, but on the cold, unyielding logic of collective survival. As the conspiracy expands, the psychological toll and moral compromises multiply exponentially. You are no longer an administrative observer who can deflect blame up the chain of command. Your decisions now directly end human lives or demand agonizing ethical surrenders. During the winter of your 4th year, severe food rationing triggers massive civilian riots in the capital. 70,000 starving factory workers and desperate citizens surround the Southern Industrial District's administrative complex, tearing down massive propaganda portraits of the dictator. The Supreme Commander bypasses the standard chain of command and calls your secure line at midnight, issuing a direct, unwritten mandate.
Deploy the 5th Infantry Regiment, utilize armored infantry fighting vehicles and live combat ammunition, and completely clear the streets before dawn. No sirs.
Ajax is confirmed. Strike at dawn.
Understood. It will be done.
It is a fatal trap. If you execute the order to the letter, you become a butcher, your hands stained permanently with the blood of thousands of your own desperate countrymen. If you refuse or display even a moment of hesitation, the Security Bureau's hidden monitors will flag your insubordination, and an arrest warrant will be executed within 5 minutes, exposing your 4 years of preparation, the salt mine arsenal, and Vance's armor to immediate destruction. You spend 2 agonizing hours alone in your dark office, paralyzed by the choice. Your conscience screams at you, a violent civil war raging within your mind. Ultimately, cold rationality and a pathological obsession with the long-term objective smother your empathy. You lift the receiver and issue the mobilization order to the 5th Infantry Regiment, but you introduce a series of highly precise tactical deviations into the operational plan. You command the units to sever all electrical grids and communication lines across the industrial district, plunging the area into absolute darkness before launching a massive barrage of high-concentration tear gas and flashbang canisters to maximize psychological terror. Simultaneously, You instruct trusted officers to intentionally leave a wide exit corridor leading toward the open eastern plains, broadcasting fabricated retreat instructions over military megaphones. Despite your tactical maneuvers to minimize direct gunfire, the ensuing panic, stampedes, asphyxiation, and isolated skirmishes along the perimeter leave 542 dead bodies littering the cobblestones by sunrise. You stand in the blood-smeared plaza at dawn, looking down at the discarded shoes and pieces of stale bread, your stomach churning violently. You have traded the lives of your countrymen to secure the Supreme Commander's praise as an iron-fisted, reliable commander, earning a promotion to commander of the capital garrison. You have adapted, you have ascended, but you are transforming into the very monster you set out to destroy. You note in your private thoughts that this is the heavy toll of soul usury required to buy the downfall of an empire. By the 5th year, you have become one of the most powerful military figures in the state. You command 15,000 heavily armed garrison troops, control all 8 primary transit checkpoints into the capital, and hold the keys to every military depot. Yet the danger does not recede with your expanding authority. Instead, it hovers closer, a sharpened blade suspended by a thread, driven by the dictator's spiraling clinical paranoia. To counter the regular armed forces, the Supreme Commander utilizes a hidden black-budget stream to establish the Black Shirt Guard Brigade. This elite Praetorian unit consists of only 4,000 men, but they are composed entirely of ideological fanatics and highly paid foreign mercenaries. They are equipped with advanced, late-model main battle tanks, possess an independent military satellite communication uplink, and are garrisoned directly within a 3-kilometer inner perimeter surrounding the presidential palace. Your 15,000 garrison troops outnumber them, but your men are largely low-morale conscripts who have not seen regular pay in months. In a direct, uncoordinated engagement, your units would likely disintegrate against the mechanized fury of the guards. To neutralize this threat, you require 2 things: immense liquid capital to buy the immediate loyalty of the rank-and-file soldiers when the time comes, and the guaranteed neutrality of the Air Force to prevent your tanks from being picked off by attack helicopters. You deploy an aggressive strategy of extortion and manipulation. Through black market wiretaps and financial intelligence, you uncover comprehensive documentation detailing how the Deputy Minister of Foreign Trade is utilizing offshore shell corporations to smuggle rare earth minerals and state gold reserves to foreign buyers. You do not hand this intelligence over to the Interior Ministry. Instead, you walk into his private villa past midnight with the dossier in hand. During a brutal 4-hour psychological interrogation, you quietly outline the exact dimensions of a hanging gallows while sliding a piece of paper containing his private Swiss and Cypriot bank account passwords across his desk. Your terms are non-negotiable. Over the next 90 days, he must exploit trade settlement loopholes to divert $40 million in physical U.S. currency through a Panama-registered shipping syndicate into a secure, untraceable account under your control. This staggering sum becomes the ultimate fuel for your conspiracy. You take a significant portion of this cash and meet privately with the commander of the 11th Composite Flying Wing at the Northern Air Base. You waste no time appealing to his sense of patriotism or duty. You place a foreign bank confirmation slip showing a $20 million balance directly on top of his flight maps. Your tactical proposition is simple and airtight. For the first 4 hours following the initiation of the coup, every fighter jet and attack helicopter under his command must remain grounded on the tarmac under the pretext that the base's primary radar arrays are experiencing a catastrophic, unexplained electronic failure, preventing the acquisition of friend or foe signals. For 45 minutes of absolute airspace neutrality, Vance's mechanized division can breach the city limits and isolate the Guard Brigade. Under the dual weight of immense wealth and guaranteed survival, the Air Force colonel signs his name to your plot. The calendar now reads May 16, 2026. Your operational timeline, codenamed Operation Daybreak, is calibrated down to the second. The coup is scheduled to detonate tomorrow morning at precisely 4 o'clock, H hour. At that moment, your internal saboteurs will sever the primary fiber optic trunk lines at the Capitol's number 4 distribution hub, completely paralyzing the presidential palace's landline communications with the outside world. Simultaneously, a mobile electronic warfare vehicle disguised as a commercial television broadcast van will deploy high-powered directional jamming against the palace's satellite arrays, severing the Guard Brigade's link to the 300,000 internal security troops stationed across the provinces. Vance's tanks will deploy under the guise of a midnight readiness exercise, reaching the capital's outer defensive ring by 3:50 a.m., where your garrison forces will open the heavy fortified gates using internal clearance codes. Yet, in this dark hour, with less than 5 hours remaining until either absolute victory or the firing squad, a catastrophic variable materializes without warning. At 11:30 p.m., the red, encrypted telephone sitting on your desk, the direct line to the inner sanctum of the presidential palace, erupts into a piercing, violent ring. The sound hits your strained nerves like a sledgehammer. You pick up the receiver to hear the cold, urgent voice of the dictator's personal chief of staff.
Commodore, the order is given. Initiate the phase change immediately. You are to proceed to the underground bunker at once. No delays.
Your heart slams against your ribs, a massive spike of adrenaline narrowing your peripheral vision into a dark blur. This is a lethal development. Being summoned to the inner bunker at this specific juncture carries only 2 possible meanings. Either Operation Daybreak has leaked, perhaps the Air Force commander or the trade minister broke under the pressure and traded your head for their own survival, meaning a hidden execution detail awaits you behind those blast doors. Or the dictator has detected an anomaly elsewhere that does not yet implicate you. You step in front of the wall mirror, staring at a face that years of conspiracy and suffocating stress have carved into a pale, expressionless mask of stone. You are facing the most critical, high-risk decision of your life. If you refuse the summons, abandon your post, and flee north to the salt mine to order an immediate premature launch of the coup, your forces will be caught entirely out of position. The electronic warfare vans are still navigating highways miles away. The Air Force commander's funds have not cleared final verification, and the entire operation will degenerate into a chaotic, uncoordinated street fight with a success probability below 10%. The highly trained Guard Brigade will tear your disorganized conscripts to pieces. But if you choose to obey and walk into that underground bunker and a firing squad is waiting for you, 5 years of calculated risks, your stockpiled arsenal, and the sacrifices of your executed comrades and the 500 dead civilians will evaporate into nothingness. You close your eyes and draw a slow breath, the phantom scent of lime and blood filling your lungs. You realize that a true commander cannot pray for a flawless battlefield. You must execute your intent within the heart of the fog, accepting the risk of total annihilation. You make your choice. You reach into your locked drawer and retrieve a specialized, custom-manufactured 9mm pocket pistol constructed entirely of high-density ceramics, devoid of any metallic components that could trigger the magnetic scanners at the palace's subterranean checkpoints. You strap it securely into a concealed holster beneath your left armpit, deep inside the lining of your dress uniform. Your hands are as steady as they were 5 years ago. You fling open your office door, step out into the freezing, driving rain, and climb into the rear of your armored staff sedan. 20 minutes later, you pass through the 3rd and final heavy blast gate guarded by the Black Shirt Guard Brigade. These young, ideologically pure soldiers look at you with predatory, assessing eyes, their hands resting on the grips of their German-made assault rifles. You maintain the cold, aloof arrogance expected of a high-ranking general staff officer, the click of your leather boots echoing down the polished granite corridors. The air inside the deep bunker is heavy and stagnant, filled with the low mechanical drone of the industrial ventilation system, smelling faintly of expensive cigar smoke and chemical disinfectants. You push open the heavy, soundproofed door of the central war room. At the center of the circular table, a massive holographic display projects a glowing, blue tactical map of the capital's defense sectors. The Supreme Commander stands with his back to you, hunched over the light of the map. He appears significantly more frail and stooped than he does on state television, his posture warped by years of paranoia and heavy chemical dependency. But when he turns to face you, his deep-set eyes still retain the manic, predatory cruelty of absolute authority. There are only 3 other individuals in the room: the Dictator, the Director of the National Security Bureau, and the Minister of the Interior. There are no hidden soldiers, no raised rifles. Yet the flashing red indicators tracking across the holographic map cause every muscle in your body to lock into a rigid state of tension. The Dictator speaks, his voice a raspy, erratic growl as he utters your name. He points a trembling finger at the tactical display, specifically at the sector 45 kilometers outside the city center, the exact deployment zone of Major General Vance's 3rd Mechanized Division. The Dictator reveals that 15 minutes ago, a specialized National Security Bureau monitoring post intercepted a series of highly irregular encrypted communication bursts originating from Vance's headquarters. Although the cryptanalysts have been unable to decode the text, the metadata confirms the signals were transmitted directly to the Northern Military Airfield. The Dictator slams his gnarled, liver-spotted hand onto the table, declaring that Vance is actively organizing a military mutiny against the state. The Dictator fixes his gaze on your eyes, a stare designed to pierce your skull and read the hidden architecture of your thoughts. He delivers a direct verbal decree. You are to return to your garrison headquarters immediately, mobilize the 1st Heavy Infantry Regiment and the 2nd Artillery Brigade, and completely encircle the 3rd Mechanized Division's base by 2 o'clock in the morning, exactly 2 hours before your scheduled coup. You are ordered to strip Vance and his entire staff of their weapons, and if they offer even a shred of resistance, you are authorized to utilize tactical rocket artillery to level the entire installation. The Dictator slides a physical emergency mobilization order bearing his personal crimson seal across the table toward you. The flames of absolute ruin have arrived at your feet. Destiny has cornered you in a dead end with no margin for error. If you accept this mobilization order and execute it, you will personally destroy your most vital tactical asset. Vance's heavy armor will be pulverized by your own artillery. Your operational timeline will lose its mechanical fist. And once you have outlived your utility, the Dictator will inevitably eliminate you in the subsequent wave of purges. Yet, if you exhibit even a fraction of a second of hesitation in this room, or attempt to defend Vance or suggest a delay in troop movements, the security director sitting 3 feet away will instantly read the truth, and the elite guard details stationed outside the door will riddle your body with lead before you can take another breath. Your planned operational sequence has been shattered by a chaotic variable. You have mere seconds to completely invert your strategy and prematurely trigger the fall of a regime from inside the monster's mouth. Your intellect operates at maximum capacity, running thousands of probabilistic outcomes through a matrix of survival. Accelerating the timeline means abandoning all synchronized elements. It means plunging the capital into a blind, bloody street war without your electronic warfare vehicles in position, without the satellite arrays jammed, and before the Air Force commander's funds have cleared. But it is the solitary path to survival, the only narrow gate leading to the ultimate seat of power. You do not blink. You step forward and firmly grasp the emergency mobilization document. You lift your chin, looking directly into the bloodshot, paranoid eyes of the tyrant, and allow a mask of zealous, unshakable loyalty to wash over your features. You inform the Supreme Commander in a loud, commanding tone that the 3rd Division's anomalies have been under your personal surveillance for weeks, and that your garrison units are already sitting in their vehicles with live ammunition. To ensure Vance cannot use shortwave radio frequencies to alert any hidden co-conspirators across the country, you request immediate authorization to utilize the War Room's Supreme Command Terminal to place the Capitol garrison on absolute radio silence and issue the emergency deployment codes. The Dictator's suspicious gaze locks onto your face for 5 agonizing seconds. Those 5 seconds stretch into an eternity, during which you can hear the faint, damp friction of your uniform fabric pressing against the ceramic pistol concealed beneath your arm. Finally, his rigid jaw slackens slightly, and he gives a curt nod, stepping aside to grant you access to the hardened military command console connected directly to every active unit in the Republic. You step up to the terminal, your hands hovering over the mechanical keys. You draw a deep breath, concentrating every ounce of your 5 years of pent-up degradation, fear, and calculation into your fingertips. Your fingers strike the keys with explosive speed, entering not the code to deploy the artillery against Vance, but a highly classified, deeply buried emergency defense protocol that you have memorized through thousands of sleepless nights. Echo 09. In the garrison's emergency operating procedures, this specific code signals an immediate, catastrophic domestic threat to all your embedded officers across the Capitol. The moment it registers on their screens, your loyalists across 12 sectors will skip all intermediary confirmations, immediately cut the public electrical grids to their assigned quadrants, and summarily detain all non-garrison government officials within their reach. Most critically, this exact signal will flash on to the tactical display inside Major General Vance's command vehicle, conveying a single, desperate truth. The plot is compromised. Disregard all phases. Charge the Capitol at maximum speed. You strike the Enter key with brutal finality. The terminal monitor erupts into a cascade of brilliant, toxic green code. Within a fraction of a second, the sudden, massive electrical surge across the Capitol's power grid overloads the bunker's primary circuits. The massive, holographic defense map warps violently, flickers twice, and vanishes into blackness. The overhead fluorescent tubes die instantly, plunging the entire underground war room into pitch darkness. A moment later, a heavy mechanical thud echoes behind the walls as the emergency backup systems kick in. Low, blood-red defensive lights hum to life in the corners of the ceiling, painting the entire room in a thick, crimson hue. The roar of the climate control system grinds to a sudden halt, leaving a terrifying, absolute silence broken only by the ragged, panicked breathing of the men around the table. "What is happening? What did you do?" The security director screams into the darkness, his chair scraping violently against the floor as his hand claws frantically for his sidearm. The Supreme Commander stares at the dead terminal screen. Even with his mind degraded by paranoia and drugs, his primal political instincts immediately recognize the scent of treason and impending death in the crimson light. He whips his head around, his eyes wide and monstrous under the red glow, locking his gaze directly onto you. His hand trembles violently as he reaches beneath his desk, trying to find the manual panic button that will alert the 4,000 heavily armed guards stationed directly outside. You stand perfectly still in the shadow of the terminal, your figure cast as a long silhouette against the red walls. You do not run, nor do you offer an explanation. Your left hand moves with fluid, lethal precision into the breast of your uniform, your fingers wrapping tightly around the textured grip of your ceramic pistol. Far above the concrete ceilings of the deep bunker, the distant, wailing shriek of the city's air raid sirens begins to pierce the earth, rising to a frantic, deafening crescendo. It is the sound of your coup beginning, the funeral knell for an empire. You look down at the aging tyrant who has held the lives of millions in his hands for 3 decades, listening to the first distant cracks of small arms fire and the low, rumbling vibration of tank treads beginning to crush the asphalt above. The ultimate game of life and death has just breached its final gate. The chaos of a civil war is unfolding around you, and you are completely out of exits.